A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back once again to HJN Season 4, or as we currently know it as, HJN Super Graphix, a series that is more or less a continuation of HJN Graphix, which was a fall 2021 event, but here in early 2025, I went on ahead and decided to continue basically from where we left off. There were a good number of games that I talked about then, but here I plan on doing a lot more coverage, especially with plenty of newer titles that have come around since then. And one of these is Disney Speedstorm for 2581. So, what I'd have to say here is that this was basically the big breakthrough that Gameloft Barcelona, which is in fact a Barcelona-based software company that was responsible for the development and release of the highly acclaimed Disney Speedstorm, a well-known phenomenon of modern-day kart racing as well as Disney enthusiasts worldwide. And I am more or less willing to consider this one of the best of 2023. And I have talked quite a bit about some other releases over the years, and especially when you get to know about HJN Super Graphix as I've discussed so far, with such titles like Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 being better than the predecessor Hot Wheels Unleashed, and the same year we also got Dredge. So there's a lot that I have to say regarding the year 2023. And in terms of video games, you could never possibly get enough of all the crazy stuff that we've been through. Disney Speedstorm was without a doubt one of the best regarding kart racing games. And because of the fact that there was an overabundance of kart racing games all throughout the 2010s and the 2020s, mainly riding the wave of the massive success of Super Mario Bros. Or Mario Kart as we've come to know it as, especially with its release on the Nintendo Wii. It was clear by this point, though, that kart racing was more than just an average racing game. It became so big that tons of licensed properties were getting all over the bandwagon. I mean, you not only had Mario, but there was also Team Sonic Racing, there was Crash Nitro Kart, basically, a Crash Bandicoot themed one. There was also a Garfield themed one, and there was even a trilogy of Nickelodeon kart racers games. Yeah. You might remember when I have had actually to talk about the Nickelodeon Kart Racer series. I feel like I could discuss those in a future episode of the Super Graphix series. But at this point, I would basically like to take in a solid several minutes to discuss why Disney Speedstorm, out of all the contenders of modern day kart racing games, might just be the best out of the bunch. And what I can at least start off with is the fact that Gameloft Barcelona was unlike a good majority of other contenders. It wasn't like OG, it wasn't like Microids, it wasn't like Game Mill, it wasn't like Mindscape, it wasn't like Hasbro Interactive or Bandai Namco or any of the other known contenders when it comes to creating video games and becoming big successes. No, basically, what Gameloft Barcelona was, somebody that I had never seen before up until this point. And even now, about 2 years later, I'd still look back with a lot of anticipation. Because having watched through the trailers as far back as the start of 2023, a little while before the game's actual release came around, I was beyond excited. The game itself just seemed like a big contender in the car racing games, but when I looked closely at it, it was way more than what it stood for. It was just living evidence that we could possibly get even more than what we bargained for. Way more. And when I placed my order on the PlayStation Store, as soon as it came out in April 2023, it might have been one of the best decisions I ever made. Because in 3 going on 4 different playthroughs that I have gone through so far in nearly 2 years since the game's overall console release on the PlayStation Store, I can happily agree it's the absolute best thing that I might have done in car racing history. Because it at first does start us off with some tutorials, as the controls are a bit different than what we'd expect on most car racing games. This one felt a bit more on the complex side when it came to kart racing games, and that's mostly in tandem with the file size itself, as it took up a pretty large amount of gigabytes and would add up more depending on how much content we have filled in, plus the many updates that would come along in the past 2 years. And I'll talk a bit more about the updates in detail later on. But the game itself first started with kart racing probably at its best. I mean, there were future contenders that would come along shortly after Disney Speedstorm's release, including a DreamWorks All-Star Karts racing game and some others, even a Smurfs themed kart racing game. But those unfortunately pale in comparison, because Speedstorm does so much more than what it normally does. It might just be kart racing, but it does a lot more than what you'd expect. What I can at least start off with is that when you get through the first race, complete all the tutorials, you at first have yourself storylines that take place. Storylines that can take place in the main menu, but don't exactly run like actual stories. Which is unlike how Team Sonic Racing did have its own storyboard, which was accompanied by racing. That was pretty much it. But Disney Speedstorm's format of story and episodic matter are a bit different. Each level is of course a race, but in tandem with the story itself, you have a variety of different characters to choose from. And I will say that variety is a big key word here. And not to mention, many other things will have to be talked about. You have a variety of different maps, a variety of different characters. At first starting off small with the likes of such well-known contenders, including Beauty and the Beast, Mickey Mouse and Friends, and some others. But as time would go on with every new update, we would get a whole new franchise complete with some new maps, some new power-ups in coordination with said theme that these franchises represent, new characters, new inventory, new accessories, as well as characters that would accompany the drivers, known as crew members. But in terms of the drivers overall, I will say that they've had a solid selection. I mean, we do of course start off with the basics, but getting down to the majority of different franchises that we've covered, I mean, we've had Toy Story with the likes of characters including Woody, Buzz, and Jessie, as well as Bo Peep. Then of course there was the likes of Frozen. And later on, we would get even further with franchises like The Little Mermaid and Wreck-It Ralph. And I even heard that there are many others on the way as well. And I'm sure the next time I revisit the game, we're probably going to have way more than expected. Even other franchises like WALL-E have also made it into the mix. Even Figment from Imagination and Epcot is also in the game. I mean, that's a pretty rare occurrence to see some more lesser known sides of the Disney universe. But Disney Speedstorm truly did feel like the ultimate crossover, bringing together so many characters, including ones that we haven't heard much of before. Or ones that we haven't heard of since then. But the thing is that Speedstorm has done a big service in having a large budget. And having a lot of updates truly means that unlike with other things, that when it comes to updating, it might just seem a bit tedious and not necessarily as intuitive. Some games have made us wait for a while just to process updates that are more or less akin to what, let's say, Call of Duty has given us so far. I mean, the latest Call of Duty installment does have updates regarding newer weapons, newer maps, and newer things. But a lot of times it just doesn't feel very necessary to wait for a long time just to get some new weapon that you can't even have unless you unlock it. But thankfully with Disney Speedstorm updates, you can have access to everything right away. And the main part is that with each new installment that we get, each new franchise that we discover in Disney Speedstorm itself, there's a storyline that entangles to it with many races that you can go through. You can earn yourself some treasures, earn yourself some in-game currency, as well as another type of currency that does require you to pay with actual cash, or e-payments by any means. But, much like with other games that do rely on multiple forms of currency, these in-game currencies do prove to be different in most other ways. The most common of which is that you can use one to unlock a variety of characters as well as upgrade them. The highest level that I've got so far was Prince Eric from Little Mermaid. I mean, level 32, it's pretty impressive as it is. But I'm sure down the line, I'd have to get even higher levels in order to possibly go through the challenges that lie ahead. And more so when you get to know the fact that new franchises are about, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people in the comments section wanting to talk to me about their latest experiences. Not to mention, such characters all around, including ones that I haven't even unlocked yet. I mean, we could be going through San Fran, Tokyo from Big Hero 6. We could probably be cruising around, let's say, the actual Disney parks, including Animal Kingdom and Epcot, which is probably, it's where Figment came from, so it probably would give us a good opportunity to try out the parks. I mean, there's just a load of variety that I feel like is just waiting to be experimented on by Barcelona themselves. And I'm sure that in due time, we'll probably have an even bigger surprise. Maybe there could be one where we face off against Maleficent, in her dragon form at least. And I'm sure that the map itself could basically encompass itself in the world of Fantasia, specifically that evil Black Cauldron creation. Yeah. I feel like that the best way to describe Disney Speedstorm is, it's a gift that keeps on giving. From the moment you purchase the game, to the many updates that you're subjected to, they are more of the positive affirmation in life, rather than it being a negative energy. Yeah, some people will look at updates as being unnecessary, happening too often and whatnot, but updates here are truly the best. You can have access to anything you possibly want. And with all the currencies and stuff you have to earn, all the parts you can pick up, all the mystery box surprises that you can be subjected to, all the crew members that can aid in your racing career, and loads of other things. There's just tons of things for me to talk about here. It's no wonder why Disney Speedstorm has been highly regarded. It's just such a well-made game by a community. Literally, Gameloft Barcelona employs itself in the community. It would also explain why the soundtrack is extremely diverse, as well as expanded. There's tons of tracks all around the place, including some that are exclusive to various franchises, some of which are actually remixes from soundtracks of various films, Aladdin, Toy Story, Beauty and the Beast, and many others. I mean, you even have remixes of actual songs that were from the soundtrack, which is definitely a nice touch. So, there's just so much more I could talk about the game itself, but I feel like I could be taking up a little too much time. Kind of like how I spent almost a full hour talking about Security Breach. I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't want me to do that anymore, so the overall scoring on this part is going to be set at a good 9.7 out of 10.1. Certainly the best regarding modern day kart racing games. And while others have followed in its wake since then, none of which have contended to the likes of Disney Speedstorm so far, and maybe that's probably for the best. But of course, if you want to see more, go down on the channel, as well as other things that I have going on. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side.